artists such as Placido Domingo, Renato Brunson, and others, Bruson, excuse me, and others in new productions of Aida and La Traviata, designed and mounted by film, opera, and theater director Franco Taffarelli. Before Scott starts, though, I have a little surprise for all of us. Um, Kurt helped me with a little extra surprise. The final members of the Amahl cast would have been Julian Patrick, who is no longer with us, and John McCullum. The other one is Martha King, and we were not at all sure that Martha King would be able to join us. But instead, I'm going to do a quick screen share. She had a stroke recently, and she was gracious enough in the hospital to send us this greeting that I'd like to share.
Yes, indeed.
Let me see what happened to my screen share.
Take your time.
There it is.
Hello, Richard. I haven't seen you in 57 years. I can't believe it.
How are you?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, God.
You look wonderful. It's so good to see you. And it's been way too long. I did run into Kirk Browning about 6-7 years ago at Lincoln Center. I heard somebody mention his name. Oh, here's Martha.
Okay, can everybody please mute? I'm not getting any sound for some reason.
Right. Yes, we're not hearing. There's something in her feed.
No, I have it on my apologies. Let me try to do that again.
Rebecca is her daughter, whom I was able to contact through, here we go.
We're still not getting sound.
I was going to say, Louise, if I may throw my 2 cents in. Sometimes when you go to share, there's a box you have to click that says share audio. Is there a box for you that says share audio when you do your share screen?
It hasn't. I've been sharing all long enough.
Oh, okay. Because I made that same mistake with with a presentation on Friday.
Alvin is. I see the three of them as an attendee. Huh. Let me stop the share for a second and see if I can play it without sharing first.
Okay.
Something is not.
Technology.
Well, I've tried this several times and it's been working. So increase the volume. Oh, I really want you. Oh,
And
got it.
my name
Okay,
is
got it.
There we go.
It was on the film that it was down. All right, so we're gonna try it one more time. Sorry to take this long, but I think I know where to look.
my name is Martha, and I played mother in Amahl, and it was probably the highlight of my performing career, and I think probably yours also. Happy birthday, Willis. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Willis. Happy birthday to you. Da 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 da.
Oh, bless.
Time flies, doesn't it?
That's it.
So thank you so much for Kurt. He really took that on and went and found her, and so thank you. So you are all reunited. So I will turn it over to Scott to introduce Arthur and move on to the panel. Thank you all.
All right, Louise. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Toppin. Good. Hello, everybody. I'm trying to turn on video so I can join you, and it says it's disabled on the other side.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, we see your static picture here and hear your voice, but
All right. Hello, everybody. Oh, my goodness. What an incredible pleasure and honor to see you all here. I'm going to take a couple moments, if you don't mind. Dr. Toppin, my dear colleague, said I could have just a couple seconds to set up and make an introduction. So before we make our transition to this next session, I'm just going to ask for 90 seconds of our time. I don't want to take more than that because I have to acknowledge and share the incredible blessing that fills my heart in this moment. When I think about what we've been and what we've experienced thus far, delivering a more dynamic, diverse curriculum for the 21st century music student, the collection of Dean Willis Patterson to the Bentley Historical Library. When I think about the topics and the discussions that we've been engaging in, particularly the new frontiers in Black studies of music, the panel that I was just immersed by in this previous session, that brought me to tears on so many levels and in so many ways. I feel like I'm being taken to church all over again, and so honoring our four mothers and four fathers, my brothers and sisters. I have to say amen, amen, amen.
amen.
And so as Dr. Toppin said, my name is Scott Piper, and I bleed blue. I'm a graduate of U of M and honored to now serve as chair of the illustrious and luminous Department of Voice, the focus and vision of which is directly linked to the legacy of Dean Patterson. And so I'm filled with such gratitude in this moment, and I'm grateful to you, Dr. Louise Toppin, my colleague, for your tireless efforts and dedication to the incredible work that started with Dean Patterson. I'm grateful to the support of my colleagues, my peers, my friends, my brothers and sisters, both from and still at this institution, our alma mater, for continuing to inspire me, for your patience, for teaching me how to put my own shoulder to the heavy lifting that you have all done and continue to do. I am grateful. And I'm grateful to the spirit of Shirley Verrett, in whose office I sit, and with whom I was blessed to take lessons, because Mr. Shirley allowed that to happen. I am hugged by her grace, her strength, her peace every time I will come to work. And if not for her deep friendship with George Shirley, she wouldn't be here. And I am grateful to my father, my mentor, Mr. George Shirley, for his love and guidance. And when I think about the fact that there would be no George Shirley, no Mr. Shirley, without a Dean Patterson here first, I am filled with gratitude.
Yes, indeed.
And I am so grateful to Frankie, Dean Patterson's brilliant, strong, loving wife, and the rest of the Patterson family for sharing him with us, for letting our hearts, my heart, be held by him. There are no words with which I can capture my appreciation for the gift that you have given all of us in him, and finally arriving as if on cue, perfectly at the moment, as he does. Sir, I am grateful to you in so many ways for investing in me, though I was not in your studio, for respecting, still perhaps even, my own woundedness, for holding my broken sense of self, for teaching me to be accountable and to work and to strive. And when I think that I now get to sit in this seat as chair of the department that you have completely shaped and formed through everything that you have done, my heart bursts with gratitude. And so here at this moment, my brothers and sisters, all of you watching, we get to turn to Amahl and the Night Visitors. And I get to tell you about the 1963 broadcast, the recording that had these three amazing artists. And I'm going to start first with the moderator, and then I'm going to start to slowly back out of the way and let you guys do your thing. Because Arthur White, the moderator for today's discussion, has built his career in the performing arts both on and off stage. He has been a singer, he has been an artist manager, an administrator, and a producer. As an impresario, he has presented operatic artists at numerous domestic and international venues, from the Shanghai Bund all the way to Carnegie Hall. He joined Michigan Opera Theater in 2013, where he conceived and successfully implemented the Opera Club Outreach Program in Metro Detroit. He's been recognized twice by Opera America as a future leader in opera. He is currently in Detroit at MOT as their Director of External Affairs. So Arthur, thank you for being here. We're thrilled to have you moderate. Next, I'm going to talk about Richard Cross. And I'm going to have to capture some of his career and try to reduce it in a way that we can digest it with the time that we have. Sir, it's incredible to make your acquaintance, and I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce you. It should come as no surprise that when he made his professional debut in 1958, as it was at the first festival, listen to the number of firsts this artist has. First festival dei Due Mondi in Spoleto, Italy, in the world premiere, first, of Lee Hoybe's The Scarf. Now, impressed by his performance, Giancarlo Menotti, who ran the Spoleto Festival at the time, invited him to portray the role of Donato in the second new thing of the new opera Maria Golovin. Cross agreed and portrayed the role in premieres in Brussels at the World's Fair, and then again when it premiered in the United States on Broadway at the Martin Beck Theater, under the umbrella of the NBC Opera Theater. And this should stand out to us for a second. This talk about linkage and connections and networking. So he continued his career traveling all over the world, singing at the Baltimore Opera Company, Houston Grand Opera, Philadelphia Lyric Opera Company. Roles like Heinrich der Vogel in Lohengrin, Sparafucile in Rigoletto, Hunding in Die Valkyrie, Mephistopheles in Faust, Raimondo and Lucia. San Francisco Opera followed, performances in Bellini's Norma with Joan Sutherland and Marilyn Horne. It goes on and on, this impressive resume. Frankfurt Opera, Opera Berlin, Stuttgart, Hamburg. But in 1963, something magical happened. In 1963 with Martha King, and now with Kurt Yaghjian, to be able to introduce you, sir, to be able to tell all of us here that he began his professional career in the title character of this opera, Menotti's Amahl and the Night Visitors.
Yeah, my first gig.
It's amazing. Amazing.
Wow.
And then after graduating from the University of North Carolina School of the Arts in 1971, this is when he was cast in the original Broadway production of Jesus Christ Superstar as an understudy for Judas, who at that time was played by Ben Vereen, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And early in the run, Kurt took over the principal role of the high priest, Annas, and being seen by director Norman Jewison, was cast in that role. And this is where I first became acquainted with you, in the iconic feature film of the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar for Universal Pictures. And going back and listening to those clips, it was just like, it was fantastic. Kirk was also featured soloist in the musical number Ain't Got No in Milos Forman's film of the musical Hair.
With Nell Carter. Nell Carter sang in that number with me. And Tony Williams.
Amazing.
Yes.
So You've remained in the New York City area for most of your career, recording and performing with artists such as John Lennon, Yoko Ono, Carly Simon, David Byrne, even the Talking Heads, Tony Bennett, Patty Austin, Cyndi Lauper, David Sanborn, Irene Cara, many, many others. And your voice has also been heard on many national radio and TV commercials from the 1970s through for such clients as Ford, Coca-Cola, Sprint, Wendy's, Toyota, Burger King, Kodak, and many others. And for the past 6 years, you've been a featured vocalist, if I remember, with the J. Siegel's Tokens, and performing in concert halls and arenas all over the country and the world. And now, I don't even know what to say about Dean Patterson, because we keep talking about it.
That's who brought us all together.
And
right
this
now,
is what it all is. So, with all of the gratitude and joy and love and appreciation in my heart, Arthur, I'm going to turn this over to you now. You take the baton and you run with the show. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott, for all of those words. This is truly an honor. I feel like I'm in the presence of opera royalty. As Louise had mentioned, Amahl is one of those operas that I saw as a young boy. I got the opera bug very early, and Amahl was one of those operas that I got the score, started trying to sing it, and was able to play Balthazar a few years back in the 90s. But we could talk about my attempts at that a little later. But I just wanted to, I'd gotten Martha King's bio. We didn't include her. I thought since she made an appearance, I would just take a quick moment to read a bit about her. Martha King, she received her Bachelor's of Music degree from Florida State University. Thereafter, she was invited to study with legendary opera singer and vocal coach Rosa Poncell in Baltimore. You can't get greater than that. She was encouraged to sing for Herbert Grossman, then NBC Opera Company's conductor, and I believe he conducted this performance, the one we're going to talk about today. And so she says she got a call from NBC to audition for the next production, and she auditioned at Radio City, and she got the role. So that's Martha King. I wanted to, I guess everyone who probably is with us probably knows about the history of this piece. Of course, it started a few years earlier in 1951 when Giancarlo Menotti wrote this opera specifically for television, the first American opera to be written and to be televised. A story about a disabled boy and his mother. He's Amahl, of course, and they sort of intersect the three magi, the three wise men, or the three kings on their way, following that star, looking for the Christ child to lay their presence down. And so we sort of see their happenings. Of course, this particular production in 1963 was unusual. So it had been performed every year from 51 until 63 live. But in 63, two things changed. Well, I'm sure a few things changed, but two things I want to talk about. One, it was videotaped. I guess in the previous years, it had always been done live. This particular year, it was videotaped. And it was also the first year, I understand, that the role of Balthazar, which had previously been performed by singers in blackface, this is the Moor King, was performed for the first time by Mr. Dean Patterson, the first African American. So those are two big distinctions that I kind of wanted to maybe start there. But before we start there, I wanted to ask, could each one of you talk about how you came to the role to be chosen? I believe, Kurt, I read something that your father was a conductor with Cincinnati, and Menotti had heard you and just thought you had this angelic voice and face. Is that how you came to the role?
Yes, it actually is. My father was associate conductor with Max Rudolph at the Cincinnati Symphony from 58 through 62. And the Cincinnati Symphony had commissioned Menotti to write a piece for their May Festival, which included an adult choir, a children's choir, and 7 soloists. It's called The Death of the Bishop of Brindisi.
I sang that too.
You did? There you go.
It's a world premiere.
You did that in Cincinnati?
Yes.
You were there, and I did. We knew each other even before Amahl, and I didn't know. But my father introduced me to Menotti backstage during the rehearsals for that. And Menotti said to him, you know, he looks very much like the child I imagined when I was writing it. And he said, does he sing? And my dad said, yes, he does. And I sang in school choirs, and my mother was an opera singer. Both of my parents were born in Detroit, as was I. My dad went to Cass Tech.
Oh, what do you know?
Yes. Yes. And so a lot of musical roots there. My father started out as a conductor at the Detroit Opera Society, late 40s. After he came back from World War II, he survived the Battle of the Bulge. He fought in World War II, came back on the GI Bill.
Wow.
Wanted to be a musician. That's all he wanted to do. And he took over as conductor of the Detroit Opera Society through 1950. He met my mother then, who was a lyric soprano. Thank God she's still with us. My mom just turned 91, Willis.
God bless her.
So I feel like I'm in royalty still, and with you and Richard and so yeah, that's how I got the role. I came to New York, auditioned then in '63 when they decided to do this. It was the first all-color production. NBC wanted to become the first all-color television network before ABC and CBS, and I had to get clearance though. Ultimately I had to meet David Sarnoff, who he asked me if I liked opera. I told him I loved opera. The first time I really went to opera was in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Opera in the Zoo. Did either of you sing there at that open air opera pavilion?
No, I didn't.
It was in the zoo, Willis. You would not believe it. And it was famous from the 1920s. And so, yes, I did love opera, and I guess he approved me. He was the boss. I heard he commissioned Menotti to write the opera specifically for television.
Back in '51, yeah?
Yeah.
Actually, can we get Dean Patterson in here? Dean Patterson, how did you come to be chosen? Did you actually sing for Menotti himself, or what was your path?
No, I was teaching in Virginia at the time, and I read in the newspaper that they were casting, in the New York Times, that they were casting for a new Amahl. But they didn't make any mention about the rest of the cast. So I wrote to NBC TV and said, well, you know, this may be an appropriate time for you to redeem yourselves from the first mistake you made with this opera, which was to ignore the fact that there were many African Americans at the time who could very easily sing that role. And I named several of them: Bill Warfield, several others. I can't remember the name.
Sure.
And I included myself because I had done the role and had staged the entire opera several times in my teaching.
They're in Virginia.
In Virginia and in Louisiana.
Ah.
My first teaching job was in Baton Rouge, Southern University. And I'd done two productions of it there. Cast it, conducted the orchestra, taught the singers, did the staging, everything.
Did you end up singing for Menotti himself, or how did you actually snag the role?
No, I then sent a letter to NBC and was invited to come up and audition, along with several other African-American singers. And I sang for Browning, Kurt Browning, and
Herbert Grossman, right?
Herbert Grossman.
For Herb.
Right.
Dean Patterson, can I ask you this question?
Please.
My understanding is you are the first African-American to take up the role. Is that your understanding as well?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I do know that I was the first to perform it with NBC.
Sure. So I guess my question is, what was it about 1963? Why at that moment do you think they decided to break this color barrier then as opposed to any other time?
Well, they didn't make the decision. I think my sense is, I don't know this to be a factor, but my sense is if I hadn't written the letter, they would have put another white singer with black face paint
Very
in the
promising.
role, the way they had done the others.
Interesting.
Because that was most expedient. The singers who could do it, who were non-black, were more available and more known by those who were casting the opera than others.
Got you.
So, besides, I was cheaper.
It's always about the money, right?
And
Let me bring
better.
Mr. Richard Cross in here. Now, Mr. Cross, you when you were 28, you were quite a young man at this time, yes?
Yeah, but I started even younger.
Wow. And so let me ask you, when I recently saw the video of the production, and you look like you're ancient. You must have been in the chair all day working on your makeup.
Well,
That
that
makeup call was 4 o'clock in the morning, as I recall.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
At 4. And that beard, that long beard, I
Yes.
bought it actually.
Really?
And I used it in many other operas. I used it in Norma
wow.
as Raimondo. I used part of it. Yeah.
They let you buy that. They let you buy it and take it after the production.
I think they knew I would have stolen it if they hadn't sold it to me.
I have to tell you, Richard, that looking at you now, I thought to myself, wow, he just cut the beard off and
You
just
still got the beard.
Just trimmed it up a little bit.
Just trimmed it up a little bit. That's right.
Now, so I understood this was the first year they had videotaped it in 63. So when they played it the following year, so I guess you guys just did it this one time for NBC and they recorded
Right.
it and then just
Right.
played it after that.
And then we made an RCA recording. We made a studio recording.
right.
And
right.
was the recording the same year in 63?
Yeah,
Yes.
we did it actually a week or two afterwards.
Yeah.
Are you still getting royalties and that thing still bouncing around?
I never got 4 cents for that.
Oh no.
Well, were you not forced? Did you not have to join AFTRA? I had to join AFTRA to do that.
Yeah,
I did too. I did too. In fact, they came right on the set and signed me up
That's right. That's right.
before they can permit the rehearsal to continue. They stopped the rehearsal.
I think I had to join after anyway when I was doing other television things. So
Yes, I'm glad I did. The union, both SAG and AFTRA, have they saved me as an artist in terms of making sure I got a pension. As long as you were on a union contract, you got your benefits, and I was able to in my studio work. You saying you don't ever remember us getting residuals? Every year we should have gotten a check. Now I don't remember it. I guess I should ask my mom, but did we get a check? I mean, we should have. If we were AFTRA members.
Willis, did you get money?
I did.
You did?
I did get residual checks, maybe, and I don't recall whether they were residuals for the recording and or for the television.
Wow.
Well, I should check on that. Maybe they owe me $4.
Wow.
Well,
I think I've opened a can of worms here, but can I go back to something else?
If you're owed money, Richard, through Sound Exchange, all of these contracts have been digitized, and they know who did what, and we're on those contracts. And if they owe you money, they'll find out, and you should be able to get it.
Oh, good.
All $4.
Yeah, well, it might be 40.
Maybe I can retire.
I wanted to ask you, want to turn the question to, I was looking back at some reviews at the time. And so Kurt, they said about you, what an innocent, boyish voice who was caring and devoted, angelic. Mr. Cross, beautifully effective and commanding. Dean Patterson, mysterious and yet sympathetic. I'm wondering what was the result after this went live that first year? How did this change your career? What did this mean for your career doing this production back in 63? You want to start with us, Kurt?
Well, I was actually, it did lead to a couple of other jobs. The next year, I was contacted by CBS and David Susskind, who was doing a series of repertory theaters, the biggest repertory theaters around the country. Each one was given the choice of a show to do that CBS recorded and then presented on television that summer. It was a summer replacement series of beautiful theater pieces. And I was living in Pittsburgh at that time, and they chose the Pittsburgh Playhouse, and they chose a William Saroyan play called The Beautiful People, which had a young boy character that I got to do that. And then through my father's connections, then that next year when I was 14, 2 years later, I found out about the North Carolina School of the Arts and was asked to become a student there. They had a high school theater department and they still have a wonderful School of the Arts there, the music department. John Cheeks, do you know, he was there. He was a contemporary student of mine way back, and some wonderful artists. And so I was there for 6 years. Because they offered me a scholarship, didn't have any money, and after my dad passed suddenly, he was an associate with Steinberg at that time in Pittsburgh.
And can you tell us, Mr. Cross, what did this mean for your career after this historic performance in '63?
It's really hard to say. I don't know. It may have helped establish me as an old man.
At 28, right? At 28.
Well, you were doing all these commanding roles like Hundig, so maybe they said, this guy's mature for 28.
I started that repertoire very, very young. It was my first Wagner role was Heinrich in Lohengrin. So I really am not sure, except that it did establish me as a in the we basses all have to sing old men, so yes. I now was an old man.
Yeah. Dean Patterson, how did this change your career, sir?
Well, I was teaching at the time. I returned to my teaching, but I subsequently did the Rape of Lucretia in New York at Manhattan. And then I got hadn't an agent before then. I got an agent, and directly as a result of the Amahl, I had a number of bookings that I don't think I ever would have gotten without it.
Wow, very good.
Well, plus you were good.
For concerts.
Got you. So can I ask you this question? We are now 56, it'll be 57 years this December since this opera, since your production happened. Of course, life, the culture is changing, evolving. Michigan Opera Theater started doing productions of Amahl a couple of years ago, and I was at a stop promoting the opera, and I talked about Amahl, and I said he was a cripple boy, and a lady in the first row almost fell off her chair. So something we might not say today, we would say he is disabled. As a matter of fact, I saw a production where everything, when they would talk about Amahl, they say he's disabled, but when it got to the opera, they kept cripple boy in. But I've also seen productions where they've changed, when Amahl comes to the door and sees the three kings, and the third time he comes back and says, and one of them is black, they changed that line. And so I wonder, do you have any opinions about sort of the PC nature and what impact it's had on this opera 57 years later?
I must say very quickly, yes. Humorously, but factually, in my stagings of the opera, I staged them first at two historically black institutions, and I had Amahl go to the door and say, "All of them are black."
Great! Oh, that's fabulous! Great. And all of them are black.
It's perfectly into this.
It works. Yes, perfect. Oh my goodness. I gotta say, could I just say, please. I was 12 years old, and I felt that I was being held aloft by these titans, these men and Martha. They were, to me, the consummate professionals. I really didn't know what I was doing. I knew I could sing, and I felt an incredible support and warmth from these very established professionals to me. And I was just in awe of them then and still now. It was my absolute pleasure to be able to learn a little bit from getting to work with these two great men and the other wonderful cast members we had. And then Kirk Browning made us look really good. That production crew, that technical crew at NBC, oh my God. And Do you remember the hall we recorded at was called
Yeah.
the Webster Hall
Yeah.
Yes.
in Manhattan on 11th
Very,
Street?
very ornate, as I recall.
Oh, yes. It became then the Ritz, became a very high-end rock and roll nightclub. The Ritz. Now it's back again being called the Webster Hall. I was
Or is that in Brooklyn?
No, it's in Manhattan, 11th Street, between like Broadway and where there's a little bit of a 4th Avenue there.
Yeah. I recall that there was a bit of a trip out there.
Great.
The studio where we
Television
filmed
studio
it.
was in Brooklyn. It was in Brooklyn.
Do you remember who we had lunch with? Do you remember who we had lunch with there at the Brooklyn studio? Who was in the next big studio soundstage next to us? All the guys in the red shirts. It was Mitch Miller was doing his Christmas special.
Yeah, I do recall it.
He was filming his Christmas special. So all these guys in black jeans and red sweatshirts, was the Mitch Miller Singers.
Right.
Okay. Well, I hate to be the bad guy here, but I want to keep us going with our panel. Mr. Cross, Richard, could you weigh in on this issue? If you were to see a production today of Amahl and they changed the phrase and they took out Cripple Boy, they said he was disabled, or they took out and one of them is black, would that bother you today in 2020?
Generally, it would it's what it is. In other words, it's what it is. The opera is what it is. I'm really not too thrilled with changing every word that every person doesn't like. How would you change the word and one of them is black? Would you say one of them is king, one of them has myrrh?
Yeah.
How would you change
possible.
that? How would you change that, Willis? Do you know?
Yes, I did also several performances of it in a church.
Yeah.
And the church was predominantly Caucasian. So, but two of the singers were black.
Yeah.
And so I changed it so one of them is white.
Oh. Okay.
So we also have another question here that someone's typed in. It says we know that they showed it at least 3 more years consecutively during Christmas.
Yes.
After 66, did they show it again? I don't know that they showed it again.
Yes, they did.
Okay,
Yeah.
what years did they? You know,
63, 64, 65, 66. And I thought they showed it 5 years. 67, I thought was the last year.
okay, and we also know, I guess now I want to talk about this. There was some controversy when I was reading about this that Menotti had not been involved. I guess normally because they had taped this, Menotti wasn't able to be there to supervise this production, and so I guess he yanked the rights soon after.
Yes,
is that
That's right.
is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it never went to video. You could never see it anywhere except in that archive at the Museum of Broadcasting. There is a black and white recording of it that if you say you are who you are, and you can watch it there. I've watched it there.
Right. Do we
Why
know
is it black and white?
I'm sorry, Mr. Cross?
Why is it black and white?
I don't know. They do not have a color copy. Either the Menotti estate has still withheld it was a deal, he made that deal with Sarnoff. Menotti and Sarnoff were close friends. They, through Sarnoff's connections with Toscanini, I heard, he loved he loved everything Italian. David Sarnoff, the general.
Can I ask this question, Kurt? Do you know, is this video available for purchase now? I saw it on YouTube, but is it available for purchase? Do you know?
Not that I've heard, no.
Okay.
No, it would have to be, that would go through the union too, whoever, but I think Menotti held all of the rights, all of the performing and copyrights to it. I don't think NBC, I think Sarnoff gave that to him. He wanted to do, the story I also heard was he wanted it to be done without a break. He wanted it to be done continuously.
Right.
And Sarnoff said, no, you got to have a break. You got to put it in 2 acts so that the ladies can go to the restroom. He didn't think they could sit all the way through an hour
Wow.
performance.
Well, actually, while I have you on the line here, Kurt, I wanted to ask you a question. Of all, I have seen probably 9,000 productions of Amahl over the years. I've been obsessed. Your scene, the miracle scene, is one of the most convincing ones I have ever seen. And I guess you said your folks were in the business. Did the director just really work with you, or you just had just a natural inkling to acting on the stage? Tell me about that.
Kirk led me to the way to find that moment. And he said it's going to be in the way you reach, to the way you try to hand your crutch. That will lead you there. He was very instinctive like that, and he knew how to talk to a young kid. I had never been in a principal role, so I don't know. I think it was the magic of all the people around me, that set. We did that in one take. The only thing we had to go back and redo once was the very opening, because I did have a little crack on when I went to hit my first.
The true Hollywood story. It always comes out.
Yes. So they re-recorded the first 10 minutes of it, but the rest of it was one continuous take.
Wow, fantastic performance. So we spoke earlier about Richard, about the makeup that they had to make you old. Mr. Dean Patterson, did they have to do anything for you, or you just had your natural makeup on?
They made a wonderful beard for me.
Yes, that black pointed beard.
Black bark beard.
Yeah.
And it was so convincing that several people that I knew in New York asked me, wasn't that your beard?
You said no.
It blended very well with the rest of the makeup and all.
No, that technical department, the NBC, they just was first class all the way. Really
now, they never said, when I was reading, when it was recorded. We know it was before Christmas. Did they record it like months before? When was the recording? When they videotaped it?
It was months before.
Yeah, October, or
Yeah,
I think it was
like
in
that.
October. It was the fall, I think.
And Dean Patterson, did you ever, because I know Kurt and Richard ended up meeting Menotti. Did you ever meet or work with Menotti?
No. But he did come on the set on one rehearsal.
Okay.
And
did we get his blessing? Do we know what he thought, or was he supportive?
I never even met him. I just knew it was pointed out by one of the members of the chorus that there's Mr. Menotti.
Okay. I don't remember him being there that day.
Now, in one of the interviews, Menotti, back in 51, he talked about the fact that he knew this was being commissioned for television, but he was on autopilot. He was always writing for the stage, and he was really always thinking of this as stage, but of course it was put on television. All of you have done your roles on stage. Is that correct? I know Dean Patterson has. Kurt, did you ever do the role outside of NBC?
No, not on stage. I was the lighting cue score reader backstage for a production that my dad directed. That they were using a choir from some school somewhere. But I never did it live.
Okay, and Richard, did you ever do it on stage? I mean, sorry.
I did it on stage several times. I also directed it once.
Okay. And did you have a preference? Is it better on stage, or did you think it was more ideally suited for television, or did you have an opinion?
Well, it certainly works very well on television, and very often the Amahl doesn't have quite enough voice for an opera house, and so you have to use these little Bluetooth mics attached. So actually, I would say probably it's better done on television.
Got you. And Dean Patterson, any opinion about that?
Yeah, I've had several occasions to do it on stage, and I must say I think it comes off as very good theater and opera.
Wow. Yes, the melodies, the harmonies are just spectacular. I love the work.
I had mentioned earlier, back in my young years, I found myself as Balthazar at a production at Concordia College. And I had reached out at the time to David Egan, who was in the original cast. And I talked to him. I'm wondering, did you guys ever have the occasion or interest to reach out to any of the previous interpreters of your roles at the time?
I knew them all.
Tell us about
did.
that, Richard.
Well, I was actually in the chorus of the one before.
You are kidding.
Yeah.
In 51?
No, not in 51, but they did it
58?
every year. And when
Right.
I went to New York in 1957, I went immediately into the NBC kind of pool of singers, and I was in the chorus of that and several other things. Worked with Kirk rather a lot, and so I knew all of them, and I knew Leon Lischner as a colleague quite well, and yeah, I remember all of them.
Wow, very Dean Patterson?
What was your question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, had you ever reached out or ever had any interaction with any of the previous interpreters, maybe Leon Lischner or any other?
I've forgotten the tenor. What's his name? In the
Uh,
original
John
cast.
McCullum?
No, that was our
McCullum.
tenor.
that was yours.
He taught it.
Andrew
taught-
McKinley.
Andrew McKinley. Yeah.
He taught at the University of Indiana,
Ah.
and I had a couple of occasions to exchange with him. I don't recall what the circumstance was, but it wasn't about Amahl.
Gotcha.
I just knew he was the original Casper.
You know what's great about this is I get to ask you guys all these wonderful questions that I'm just curious about. Kurt, so obviously you grew up, we know that you grew up with in a musical family. Your mom was a singer, so you got the opera bug early. Dean Patterson, you were born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan,
Right.
correct? Working class family. Was this something was opera around the house when you were a kid?
No, but my mother was a terrific soprano.
Ah.
But not of opera or classical singing. She sang in the church, but she had a beautiful soprano voice. By the way, you said you went to Concordia College.
Well, I didn't go to Concordia. I went to Loyola, but Concordia was doing Amahl, and they knew I sang, so I got pulled in to do Balthazar.
In Concordia in Ann Arbor?
I'm sorry?
Concordia College in Ann Arbor?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, in Illinois. In
Okay.
Illinois, outside Chicago.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a Chicagoan, unfortunately. And Mr. Cross?
My parents were not musical, but my father got his doctorate in New York during the Caruso years.
Ah.
And so they had quite a few Caruso recordings with other singers like Francis Alda and Pasquale Amato and people like that. And I got into these the old 78s, and I got into those regularly and became fascinated with that kind of singing. And something clicked in my mind. I thought maybe I could do that.
Wow.
And so I started as soon as my voice plummeted, I started singing.
Wow. And then, Kurt, I know we talked about you. I think Scott had mentioned that I had read that you ended up in the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar. Have you've been singing continuously all these years?
I have been fortunate, yes. I've been able to make my living just in the music business. I obviously moved more into the pop and rock scene, but been able to work with some fabulous artists. Patty Austin, a wonderful jazz singer. She took me to Carnegie Hall for the first time, and being in the New York area just has allowed me to get that full blend. I mean, I love going to the Met. I go to Avery Fisher or Geffen Hall now. And I was so fortunate. Both of my parents were just brilliant musicians, and they surrounded me with music and the diversity of the classical music world, and knew several people from Indiana University, a harpist named Margaret White. Did anyone know her? And there were many, there were two large orchestral seminars on each coast, one on the West Coast and the East Coast, that my father was an artistic director of, and met a lot of players from many orchestras, and was just the best influence you could ask for. It was just wonderful.
So I wanted to ask you about this question. So back at the time this opera was written, NBC Opera Theater, the idea was to present, some established works, but also new works. And I'm thinking of today in the opera world, so many of these new operas which are reflecting opera, our times in opera, things on the stage. I'm thinking of Blue, which just premiered last year at Glimmerglass, and the Central Park Five, and Stonewall, and Champion. I wonder, what do you make of opera today in America? Anybody want to start?
I think it's still viable, but it's hard to make money at. The stories, I mean, the power of opera brought together, and I think we should just have a little moment here. The power of opera brought together a stark, hardcore Catholic and a small, diminutive Jewish woman, and brought them together from opposite ideals. And I think the power of opera will always be there. It will ebb and wane, but I feel that I still believe in it. I know the School of the Arts, North Carolina School of the Arts, that I'm still active as an alumni in. Their music department, their opera department is very strong, and the young people I see who want to be involved in opera are energized, and they're there. Just need more money behind that. I know, listening to the discussion yesterday about getting more education, special music and African-American music studies into the curriculums, that's what will do it, but got to convince the politicians.
Patterson, any thoughts?
Well, on the other hand, I'm convinced that while opera is commercially not a very viable thing for singers to aspire to do anymore, save for a few, unless they're going to go to Europe. But the opera is really being kept alive by the college and university programs, which are very, very well done.
Yep.
Indiana, Michigan, there are a plethora of them that really do a tremendous job with opera, and particularly contemporary opera. The National Opera Association, which really consists primarily of many of these departments at colleges and universities, has a very, very strong core of performances that that their member organizations give every year.
Okay.
And the development of opera singers in the country is phenomenal. They just don't have any place to sing anymore in the country.
That's exactly the story. We produce the best singers in the world, and we don't give them a place to sing.
Right.
So I teach at the Yale School of Music, and we have a very distinguished opera department here. And I recommend to all of my students that they prepare themselves to go to Europe and audition, get into an opera house, learn their craft, and then come back here and skim a little money off. But there isn't very much repertoire opera. You can't join an opera house in this country. And so I think with 50 opera houses in Germany alone, not to mention France and Austria, and maybe 7 in the United States, there's not much competition as far as the personnel is concerned. They engage. All those opera houses are doing a performance every night.
Yeah, and in this country, of those 7, I wonder how many of them have a season that exceeds 6 or 8 performances.
Yeah, they or at the most 10 weeks in the fall or 8 weeks in the fall.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to ask. I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Dean Patterson?
No, I was simply going to say the Met and New York City Opera are the only ones that have viable seasons.
I was going to say, we're in this crazy time right now in the midst of this, worldwide pandemic. Here in the U.S., on top of this pandemic, we have issues that we have to deal with as far as race. Now, organizations looking at are we doing enough toward diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I wonder if, but probably my last question, we just have a couple of minutes left. Do you have any opinions about that, about the opera specifically, and how we are doing as far as those issues are concerned, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Any thoughts or opinions?
Things are really quite improved over what they were when I was in New York in the mid mid 50s and up to the 60s. But having said that, there's not an awful lot of opportunity for African American singers in opera, save for those works that are written by African American composers. And there are a few, but they don't get more than maybe a performance or so.
If you were king for a day, what was there anything you could change? What is there one particular area that we need to be focusing more on to maybe increase this interest and increase this viability?
Money.
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 That'll help anytime, I guess.
I'd like to add, I was involved in a project just last fall that is it's a musical tone poem. It's like a musical theater piece that's in development. Unfortunately, everything's come to a halt here. It was with the Public Theater. And it's based on the relationship between Harry Burleigh and Antonin Dvorak in that time, and treats it very seriously. And I had just was beginning to learn about that history. I knew about Dvorak, but I had never heard about his relationship with Harry Burleigh and the Conservatory of Music then. And so there's such a rich a wealth of history to be explored and to be used. And I'm hoping we find the composers and the writers. There are people that are trying to do it. It's, and that gives me faith. It gives me hope.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you should make reference to the American Conservatory, in which Antonin Dvorak was its first director.
Yes.
But one of the other students in that class that Harry Burleigh was in was a person who wrote at maybe 12 operas, African American, Freeman.
Oh, yes. But yeah, they focus on Burleigh as they make him more the central character. He and Dvorak are the two leads.
Yeah. But I don't know of an opera to speak singularly. I don't know of an opera that Harry Burleigh wrote.
No.
He wrote lots of music and lots of art songs, but no. The piece is called Largo, and the piece represents that Dvorak really got all of his inspiration, and he made a lot of speeches supporting the power of African American music and Native American Indian music. Had its own world and was powerful enough to be its own musical form. And he was roundly criticized for that, but he believed in it. But they say that he took that theme from a song that Harry sang to him. A spiritual that Mr. Burleigh sang to him. Okay. It's worth taking just another minute to point out one other aspect of the organization of the American Conservatory of Music as designed by Dvorak. He required that the entry class in that conservatory be 1/3 African American, 1/3 Caucasian, and 1/3 Native American.
Oh, wow.
And that was a very that was started by a rather wealthy dowager by the name of Thurber.
That's right, the Thurber family, right?
Yes. But and it was thought that this was going to be a harbinger of democracy in opera, but it died right there.
Well, Dean Patterson, I think you're going to get the last word. I think we're out of time. I cannot tell you what a thrill it was for me to speak with you three. Thank you so much. I don't know if we have to add anything else, Louise, before we let everyone go. But I also wanted to wish Dean Patterson happy 90th. My goodness.
Happy birthday, Mr. Dean Patterson.
And I just
Happy
have to
birthday
say,
to you.
I just have to say this. It's wonderful to see the three of you and Martha after 57 years. It's
So true.
semi-bleed eye on either one of you since then.
I wish I could hug you.
Me too. Me too.
I'm going to accept that as a hug.
Giving our virtual hugs at this time. And again,
Louise, thank you for bringing us together. Louise, you.
my sincerest thanks. And Kurt, you've been working with me for a while. And Richard, you jumped right on. I so appreciate both of you, not knowing me from Adam and agreeing to do this. And Arthur, my friend, always appreciate.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you. This was a thrill for me. So thanks for inviting me.
This was a joy.
We all enjoyed. I've been getting so many good comments from people who are watching you guys and saying thank you for your work in the broadcast. It is something that touched so many people in the United States. So thank you again for your work. We have a 2-hour break, and then we will do what is the extension of this, which is a 30-minute opera by Nkira Okoye, who is an African-American woman. And the opera is on an American folk tale, the Brer Rabbit Tar Baby story, but recontextualized. It's only a 30-minute workshop premiere we did here at the University of Michigan with graduate students, but it's part of a trilogy she's writing. And as I've said for other sessions, that had it not been for the work of you all with Dean Patterson integrating this cast on television, this woman composer who is getting so many performances for her Harriet Tubman opera, and now this new work. Harriet Tubman was the first the part was written for me. That's my connection.
There you go.
All of these this is a wonderful extension of the work that you did in 1963. So thank you all very much for your time. And we look forward to seeing people tonight at 7 o'clock. You don't need a Zoom link. You just click on and you get to watch it off of the website.
Thank you, Louise.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Thank you. Much, much love and safety all to you.
Likewise.
Same to you all.
So we can see each other in person.
Okay. Absolutely. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Willis.
Birthday,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed.